The knock. The knock came at 9:47 on Christmas Eve. Caleb Rivers heard it over the wind. Barely. He'd been feeding the wood stove, rationing the last of his firewood, making it last until morning. The second knock was louder, desperate. He opened the door. The blizzard tried to rip it from his hands. 3 figures stumbled through the white. A man, a woman clutching something to her chest, a boy, maybe 8, shaking so hard his teeth rattled. "Please," the man gasped. "Please, anyone." The woman collapsed to her knees. Caleb saw what she was holding. A child. Small. 4 years old, maybe younger. Lips that had lost their color. Eyes half open. Unfocused. Not moving. Not crying. Breathing was shallow. The woman looked up at Caleb. Snow caked in her hair. Terror carved into her face. "He stopped talking 20 minutes ago," she whispered. I can't wake him up." 14 years old. That's all Caleb was. 14, living alone in a house that had already killed 1 man. 4 people who should have frozen to death stood in his doorway now. One of them might still. The wind screamed outside. The lamp flickered. The fire in the stove was barely enough for 1 person. Now there were 5. And Caleb Rivers had maybe 10 minutes to save a child's life or watch another person die in this house. He closed the door. The lock clicked. Final. And the longest night of his life began. 8 weeks earlier. October 15th. The house had never felt like home. Not really. It was a narrow, aging place on the edge of Millbrook. Peel-in white paint. A porch that sagged just enough to remind you it was tired. Still, for 18 months, it had been the closest thing Caleb had to shelter after his parents died. Not warmth, not love, just shelter. That night, the air inside felt heavier than usual. The television murmured in the background. Some game show no one was actually watching. The smell of reheated leftovers hung in the kitchen. Sour. Faintly burned. Caleb stood near the hallway. His backpack already zipped. His hands clenched so tight, his knuckles had gone pale. His aunt didn't yell. That almost made it worse. "You can't stay here anymore," Morris said, arms crossed, eyes fixed somewhere over his shoulder, as if looking directly at him would be too uncomfortable. "We've done what we could." Caleb swallowed. He had practiced responses in his head 100 times. Promises to work harder, to stay out of the way, to be quieter, smaller, easier to ignore. But when the moment came, none of the words made it past his throat. "I'll sleep in the garage," he said finally. His voice cracked, thin, embarrassed. "Or the basement. I won't be any trouble." Graham sighed. Uncle Graham. The kind of tired, irritated sound adults make when they feel inconvenienced rather than cruel. "This isn't up for debate, Caleb. You're old enough to figure things out." Old enough. The words landed harder than the door that followed. The first night. 10 minutes later, Caleb stood on the front porch, backpack slung over one shoulder, the strap biting into his collarbone. The porch light flicked off behind him, without ceremony. The door closed. The lock clicked. Final. Absolute. The October night wrapped around him. Sharp. Cold. A thin wind scraped through the bare branches of the trees lining the street. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked once. Then went quiet. Caleb stayed where he was for a moment, staring at the door, half expecting it to open again. It didn't. He walked. At first, he didn't know where he was going. He followed the sidewalk out of habit, past houses glowing with warm yellow light, past curtains drawn tight against the cold. Each window felt like a small private world he no longer belonged to. Families eating dinner, someone laughing, someone else calling a kid to wash their hands. Caleb kept his head down. By the time he reached the edge of town, his legs ached. His chest felt hollow, like something important had been scooped out and left behind. He sat on a wooden bench near the closed feed store, shrugged his backpack off. Inside it were 3 shirts, 1 extra pair of jeans, a toothbrush, a folded photo of his parents he never let anyone see, and $63 in cash wrapped in a rubber band. He counted it anyway, once, then again, as if the number might change if he stared hard enough. The town was quiet at night, the kind of quiet that made every sound feel louder than it should be. The hum of a distant highway, the creak of the bench beneath him, his own breathing, uneven, shaky. He thought about his parents then, not in the dramatic way people talked about grief, but in fragments. His dad's laugh, loud, unrestrained. His mom's hands on his shoulders when she thought he wasn't listening. The way they used to say, "We'll figure it out," even when things were bad. Caleb wiped his face with the sleeve of his hoodie, stood up. The discovery. The next morning came gray and unforgiving. Caleb slept curled up behind the feed store, using his backpack as a pillow, waking every hour to the cold seeping deeper into his bones. When the sun finally rose, it didn't bring warmth, just clarity. He couldn't stay like this. That was when he saw the paper, taped crookedly to the bulletin board outside the courthouse. County auction. Unclaimed property. Most people walk past it without slowing down. Caleb didn't. He stepped closer, squinting at the faded print. The list was short. Old farm equipment, scrap land no one wanted. And near the bottom, almost as an afterthought, abandoned house, outskirts of town, County Road 9. Condemned structure. Minimum bid $275. Caleb's heart thudded. $275. He looked down at the cash in his hand. $63. Not even close. But there was a library 3 blocks away. The research. He went there, sat at one of the public computers, typed the address into Google Maps. The house sat 4 miles outside town, a weather-beaten place people called the Dead House, or that old wreck. Kids dared each other to go near it in the summer. Adults talked about it like a bad memory they preferred to avoid. He'd heard the stories. Someone had frozen there years ago. The roof had collapsed. The place was cursed. Useless. Caleb clicked through search results, found an article from 2004. Man found frozen in abandoned house. Daniel Wright, 47 years old. Homeless. Estranged from family. The roof had collapsed during a winter storm. Trapped him inside. He died from hypothermia before anyone found him. Caleb read it twice, then closed the browser. A strange calm settled over him. Quiet. Deliberate. He didn't feel brave. He didn't feel hopeful. He felt decided. 3 weeks of work. The next 3 weeks blurred together. Caleb worked. Everywhere. Anywhere someone would pay cash. He swept leaves for old Mrs. Harper on Maple Street. She paid him $12 and gave him a sandwich she said was extra. It wasn't extra. He knew that. But he took it anyway. He hauled boxes at the diner. Heavy crates of canned goods from the delivery truck to the back storage room. The owner paid him $15 and let him eat the burger that was supposedly made wrong. It wasn't made wrong either. He washed cars in the grocery store parking lot. $3 per car. Some people tipped. Most didn't. He split firewood for a farmer named Mr. Yates. $25 for 4 hours of work that left his shoulders burning and his hands raw. At night, he slept wherever he could. Behind the feed store when it was dry. In the covered bus stop when it rained. Once in the doorway of the closed hardware store until someone chased him off. He didn't shower. Couldn't. His clothes started to smell. He noticed. So did other people. A woman at the grocery store wrinkled her nose when he walked past. A teenager laughed and said something to his friend. Caleb kept his head down. Kept working. By the end of week 3, he had $283. Enough. Barely. Auction day. The auction was held on November 8th, in a drafty room that smelled of dust and old wood. A few farmers leaned against the walls, hands in their pockets. The county clerk read the items in a bored voice. Bids came and went without much interest. When they got to the house, the room grew oddly still. Abandoned homestead, County Road 9, condemned structure. Minimum bid $275. The clerk looked up. "Do I have a bid?" No one spoke. Caleb raised his hand. A couple of people chuckled. Not unkindly, but with that soft disbelief reserved for kids who didn't know any better. $275, Caleb said, louder this time. The clerk glanced at him, surprised, then shrugged. Any other bids? Silence. Sold. The gavel came down with a dull final sound. Caleb signed his name with a borrowed pen, his handwriting uneven, but determined. When he stepped back outside, the paper deed folded carefully in his pocket. The sky was brighter than it had been in days. He didn't know how to fix a house. He didn't know how he would survive the winter. But for the first time since the door had closed behind him, Caleb Rivers had something that was his. And that was enough to take the next step. The woman in the back. What Caleb didn't notice, what he couldn't have seen, was the woman sitting in the back of the auction room, 68 years old, silver hair pulled into a loose bun, hands folded in her lap, watching. She didn't bid, didn't speak, just watched. When the gavel came down, her expression didn't change, but her hands tightened, just slightly, because Vivian Beckett recognized that property. She'd been there the day they found her brother, Daniel Wright, frozen, alone, 10 years younger than her, and she hadn't saved him. Now a 14-year-old boy with a backpack and $275 thought he could survive where Daniel had died. Vivian stood, slowly, left before anyone could ask why she'd come. Outside, she sat in her car for a long time, staring at nothing. Then she drove to the hardware store. Her husband Warren would want to know. The walk out to the house took most of the afternoon. Caleb followed a dirt road that thinned into twin ruts, cutting through fields already turning brown with late fall. The town disappeared behind him faster than he expected, replaced by wide open land and a sky that felt too big for a 14-year-old carrying his entire life on his back. With every step, doubt crept in. He replayed the laughter from the auction room, the way people had looked at him, not angry, not even cruel, just amused, like watching a kid try to lift something far too heavy for him. Maybe they were right. By the time the house came into view, the sun was low and sharp, casting long shadows across the prairie. From a distance, it barely looked like a house at all, just a slumped shape against the land, hunched like an old man who had finally given up standing straight. First encounter. Up close, it was worse. The roof sagged inward, a section completely collapsed. Weathered boards hung loose, rattling softly in the wind. The windows were empty holes, dark, hollow, like missing teeth. The front door leaned crookedly on one hinge, scraping against the frame when Caleb pushed it open. Cold air rushed out to meet him. The smell inside stopped him in his tracks. Damp wood, old dust, and something faintly sour, like time itself had rotted here. The floor was uneven dirt and warped planks. Leaves had blown in and piled against the walls. A bird fluttered somewhere overhead. Startled by his presence, Caleb stood in the doorway for a long moment. Backpack still on his shoulders, heart pounding. This was it. This was what $275 bought. He stepped inside. The wind whistled through gaps in the walls, cutting straight through his hoodie. Light filtered down through holes in the roof, illuminating floating dust like tiny sparks. There was no furniture, no warmth, no comfort. And yet, it was quiet. Not the empty quiet of being shut out, but the open kind, the kind that waited. Caleb walked the perimeter slowly, counting steps without realizing he was doing it. The house was small. One main room, barely more than a box, with a narrow back section that might have once been a sleeping space. He crouched, pressing his hand against one of the logs. The wood was rough, splintered, but solid beneath the surface. Not all of it was ruined. In the far corner he saw it, a dark stain spreading across the floorboards, old, faded, but unmistakable. Blood. Daniel Wright's blood. Caleb stared at it, then looked away. The first night alone. He sat down hard on a half-collapsed crate near the wall. Let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding since the night before. His chest ached. His hands shook. Whether from cold or fear, he couldn't tell. He pulled the folded deed from his pocket, smoothed it out on his knee. His name was on it. For the first time in his life, something official said he belonged somewhere. That night, Caleb slept inside the house, not because it was warm. It wasn't. But because the thought of sleeping outside felt worse. He wedged the door as best he could with a broken plank, spread his jacket on the driest patch of ground he could find, curled up with his backpack clutched to his chest. Every sound jolted him awake. Wind scraping wood, something scurrying in the walls, the distant howl of coyotes. Cold seeped into his bones until his teeth chattered uncontrollably. At one point he sat up, hugging his knees, and whispered into the dark, "You can do this." He didn't fully believe it, but he said it anyway. The next morning brought light, not warmth. Frost coated the ground outside, turning the prairie silver. Caleb stepped out and stamped his feet, breathing fog into the air. His stomach growled painfully. He had $8 left. Food was already a problem. He returned to town that day, not to ask for help. He wasn't ready for that, but to look for work. He cleaned out a storage shed for an elderly woman named Mrs. Monroe, hauled junk, swept cobwebs, organized boxes she hadn't touched in years. She paid him $10, and a lukewarm sandwich, she said, was left over. It wasn't left over. But Caleb took it. People noticed him now. Not in a dramatic way. Just small glances, curious looks, someone muttering, "That's the kid who bought the old place." By late afternoon, he stopped at the hardware store, more to warm up than anything else. The hardware store. The bell above the door jingled as he stepped inside. The smell of oil and wood and metal wrapped around him. A man behind the counter looked up. Gray hair, broad shoulders, eyes sharp but tired. "Help you?" the man said. Caleb hesitated. "Just looking." "Sir." The man studied him, not unkindly, but assessing. Then, from the corner of the store, a voice. "Warren, that's him." Caleb turned. A woman stood near the paint aisle, older, maybe late 60s. Silver hair, kind eyes, but something else in her expression. Recognition. "That's the boy who bought Danny's place." Warren's face changed, just slightly. "You're the kid," he said. Not a question, a statement. Caleb stiffened. "The house," Warren continued. "County Road 9. Caleb nodded. Warren snorted softly. "That house killed a man once." Caleb met his eyes. So did the cold. He replied before he could stop himself. His face flushed, but he didn't look away. "I won't let it do it again." Silence stretched between them. The woman, Vivian stepped closer. "How old are you?" she asked, quietly. 14. "And you're living out there, alone?" It wasn't a question. Caleb nodded. "The first gift." Vivian looked at Warren. Something passed between them, unspoken. Warren exhaled, leaned back, arms crossed. "You got a plan?" he asked. Caleb hesitated, then shook his head. "I've got time, and I can work." Warren studied him for a long second. Then he reached under the counter, pulled out a small box, bent nails, a roll of twine, some scrap tar paper. Set them down. "Leftovers," Warren said. "You can have it." Caleb stared. "I don't have money right now." "Didn't ask for any." Caleb swallowed hard. "Thank you." Warren didn't smile, but something shifted in his expression. "Don't thank me yet," he said. "You're still alive come spring. Then we'll talk." Vivian stepped forward, handed Caleb a small paper bag. "Sandwiches," she said. "From this morning." They weren't from this morning. Caleb knew that. But he took them anyway. "Thank you, ma'am." Vivian's eyes glistened, just slightly. "Be careful out there," she said. Caleb nodded, gathered the supplies, turned to leave. At the door, he paused. "Why are you helping me?" he asked. Warren and Vivian exchanged another look. "Because someone should have," Vivian said quietly. And that was all. The work begins. Caleb walked back to the house as the sun dipped low. The supplies felt heavier than they should, not because of weight, but because of what they meant. Someone had seen him. Someone had helped. For the first time in weeks, he didn't feel completely invisible. Back at the house, Caleb got to work. He started small, clearing debris, dragging rotten boards outside, sorting what could still be used. His hands blistered quickly. Dirt worked its way under his nails. He worked until his shoulders burned, until his legs trembled. At sunset, he stepped back, looked at what he'd done. It wasn't much, but the space felt different, less like a grave, more like a beginning. The brutal rhythm. The days that followed fell into a brutal rhythm. Wake up cold, work until his hands burned, stop only when the light failed, eat whatever he could afford, sometimes nothing more than bread and water, sleep wrapped in his jacket, body aching too much to care. The house pushed back constantly. A beam split unexpectedly. A nail tore his palm open, blood dark against the wood. One afternoon, exhaustion got the better of him. He sat down hard against the wall, head dropping forward. For a moment, just a moment, he thought about leaving. The thought scared him more than the cold. He pressed his forehead against the rough log, breathed slowly until it passed. "Not quitting," he muttered to himself. The words were flat, stubborn. "Not this." Warren watches. What Caleb didn't know, what he couldn't have seen, was that the town had started talking differently. Not kinder, not yet, but quieter. Warren Beckett drove out one afternoon. Under the excuse of delivering feed to a neighboring farm, he didn't stop at first, just slowed his truck, watching Caleb wrestle a salvaged beam into place, alone. The kid moved with grim determination, jaw set, breath steady despite the strain. He didn't complain, didn't stop to look around for help. Warren parked farther down the road, leaned against his truck, arms crossed. That roof should have collapsed already, he thought. Then he drove home, told Vivian what he'd seen. She didn't say anything, just nodded, like she'd expected it. The second gift. The next morning, Caleb woke to find something at his door. A bundle, wrapped in canvas. He opened it carefully. Inside, more nails. A better hammer than the one he'd been using. 2 cans of beans, a jar of peanut butter, and a note, written in careful handwriting. Winter's coming. Stay warm. No name. Caleb sat there holding the note for a long time, his chest tight with something dangerously close to gratitude. He didn't know who left it, but he knew it mattered. Someone was watching. Someone cared. That was enough. The cold arrives. By mid-November, the cold came faster than Caleb expected. Mornings greeted him with stiff fingers, breath that puffed white even inside the house. Frost crept along the interior walls like a quiet warning. Every night, the wind tested the structure, slipping through cracks, rattling loose boards, reminding him how thin the line was between shelter and exposure. The house didn't welcome him. It challenged him. Caleb learned that quickly. One night, a sudden gust tore a half-rotted board loose from the roof. It came down with a sharp crack, missing his head by inches. He sat there on the dirt floor afterward, heart racing, staring at the opening above him, where stars blinked coldly through the gap. If that had happened while he was asleep. He didn't finish the thought. The next morning, he made a decision that felt heavy but necessary. If the house was going to stand, he had to tear parts of it apart first. Demolition. Demolition wasn't dramatic the way movies made it look. It was slow, exhausting, unforgiving. Caleb pried at warped boards with the crowbar Warren had given him. He climbed carefully along the weakened frame, testing each step before trusting it with his weight. Rotten wood crumbled in his hands. Nails bent instead of coming free. More than once he slipped, landed hard, knocking the breath from his lungs. No one saw that part. From the road, the place just looked worse. People began stopping again, pretending to check fences or survey fields. They watched from a distance, coats pulled tight, heads shaking. "He's tearing it down now," someone muttered one afternoon. "Told you," another replied. "Won't make it a month." Caleb heard them. He always did. He just didn't respond. The encounter on November 20th, Caleb was in town again, trying to find work, trying to stay warm. He walked into the hardware store and froze. There, near the checkout counter, Mora, his aunt. She was with another woman, laughing about something, shopping bags in hand. Caleb turned to leave, but Mora saw him. Her laughter stopped. Her face went pale. For a second, they just stared at each other. Then Mora looked away, quickly, turned back to her friend, said something low. Her friend glanced at Caleb, then back at Mora. "That's him?" the friend asked. Not quietly enough. "The one I told you about," Mora said. "The ungrateful one." Caleb felt something crack inside his chest. Not break, crack, because breaking would have been cleaner. This was worse. Mara was rewriting history, making herself the victim, making him the problem. He stood there, hands shaking, wanting to scream, to confront her, to make her tell the truth. But what good would it do? She'd already decided who he was. So Caleb turned, walked out, didn't run, didn't cry, just walked. And with every step, the resolve in his chest hardened. "I don't need them," he whispered, over and over, until he believed it. The night's work. Back at the house that night, Caleb worked by lantern light, patching gaps, reinforcing beams, doing everything he could before the next storm. His hands were raw, his body exhausted, but he didn't stop, because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering. Mora's voice, the ungrateful one. No, work was better. Work was clean. Work didn't lie. When he finally collapsed that night, wrapped in his jacket, shivering despite the exertion, Caleb stared up at the beams he'd reinforced and allowed himself one thought, one small, dangerous thought. Maybe this place wouldn't kill him. Maybe. Just maybe. It was becoming his. The first snow. The first snow came on November 28th. Not heavy, just enough to dust the ground white. Caleb stood outside and watched it fall, fear tightening his chest. This was the test. This was what would prove whether the house could hold, or whether he'd made a terrible mistake. The snow piled gently against the walls. Wind pressed against the structure. Inside, the temperature dropped fast, but something held. The patched sections didn't collapse. The roof sagged, but stayed in place. That night, Caleb sat near the makeshift fire ring he'd built, feeding it carefully, rationing warmth. He stared into the flames and felt something unfamiliar settle over him. Pride. Not the loud kind, the quiet, earned kind. He'd survived that night, then another, and another. The decision. And somewhere in the distance, in a house 4 miles away, Vivian Beckett sat at her kitchen table, looking at a photo. Her brother Daniel, taken years before the alcohol, before the homelessness, before the cold took him. "He looks like Danny," she said quietly. Warren looked up from his newspaper. "Who does the boy?" "Caleb." Warren set the paper down. "Viv, I know," she said. "I know he's not Danny. But Warren." She looked at him, eyes glistening. "What if we could save this one?" Warren was quiet for a long time. Then he reached across the table, took her hand. "Then we save him," he said simply. And that was how it began. Not with a grand gesture, not with a rescue, but with two people deciding that this time they wouldn't look away. December arrives. December 1st arrived without asking permission. It came the way winters often did out here. Hard, fast, unforgiving. Caleb woke to a silence so deep it felt wrong. No wind, no birds, just a thick, pressing quiet. He pushed the door open, stepped outside. The world had changed. Snow lay everywhere. Not the dusting from late November. Real snow. 6 inches. Maybe more. The sky hung low and gray. Heavy. Like it might collapse under its own weight. The cold hit him immediately. Sharp. Biting. Stealing the breath from his lungs. This wasn't the kind of cold you ignored. This was the kind that watched you. Caleb stood there for a long moment, hands shoved deep into his pockets, and felt the fear creep in. Not panic, something quieter, more honest, the kind that asked hard questions. Can you really make it through this? The households inside the house was dim and drafty, but different than it had been weeks ago. The tar paper held. The patched walls groaned, but didn't give. The roof sagged slightly under the weight of the snow, yet stayed where it was supposed to. Barely. Caleb fed the fire slowly, carefully, using only what he could spare. Wood was already becoming precious. Every log mattered. Every mistake cost warmth. He thought about the town. 4 miles away. Houses with furnaces. Kitchens with stoves. People who didn't have to choose between eating and staying warm. Then he thought about Mora, the ungrateful one, and the anger flared hot enough to burn away the fear. No, he said out loud, his voice rough from disuse. Not going back. Meeting Cordelia that afternoon, Caleb walked into town. Not for himself, for the house. He needed to know how to survive what was coming. And he needed help. Real help. The kind you had to ask for. Which terrified him more than the cold. He knocked on Cordelia Whitmore's door just after 2. She lived 3 houses down from the hardware store. A small, tidy place with a porch that didn't sag. The woman who answered was old, 70 at least. White hair pulled back severe, eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. Yes, she said, not unkind, but not welcoming either. Mrs. Whitmore, Caleb asked. Miss, she corrected. Never married. Miss Whitmore, I'm Caleb Rivers. I know who you are, she said. You're the boy with the death trap. Caleb flinched, but held his ground. Yes, ma'am, and I need help. Cordelia studied him, long enough that Caleb almost turned to leave. What kind of help? She asked finally. I need to learn how to survive winter. Real winter. And I heard you lived through the Depression. Her eyebrows rose. Who told you that? No one, I guessed, from the way you keep your garden. That got a reaction. Small. But there, a flicker of something like respect. And what makes you think I'd help you? Cordelia asked. Caleb took a breath. Because I'll help you back, he said. What needs fixing? Cordelia blinked. Then she laughed. Sharp. Short. You're either very smart or very desperate. Both, Caleb admitted. She studied him again, then stepped aside. Your fence gate, she said. It's been broken 2 years. Can't lift it anymore. You fix that. We'll talk. The gate. The gate was worse than Caleb expected. Hinge rusted through. Wood warped from weather. But he had tools now. Borrowed from Warren. He worked in Cordelia's side yard for 3 hours, removing the old hinge, sanding the warp from the wood, installing a new hinge he'd salvaged from his own property, testing it, adjusting, testing again. When he finished, the gate swung smooth, closed with a clean click. Cordelia watched from her window. When he knocked to tell her it was done, she opened the door, looked at the gate, opened it, closed it, opened it again. Well, she said, and that was all. But she invited him in. The lesson. Sat him at her kitchen table, made him tea he didn't want, but drank anyway because refusing felt wrong. You want to know how to survive winter, she said. Not a question. Yes, ma'am. Then listen. And don't interrupt. Caleb nodded. Cordelia talked for an hour. About the Depression. About winters when coal was rationed and food was scarce. About making soup from potato peels. About banking fires to last through the night. About keeping your core warm even if your fingers froze. About the difference between discomfort and danger. Discomfort you push through, she said. Danger you respect. She showed him how to preserve food in snow, how to melt ice without wasting fuel, how to layer clothes to trap heat, how to know when frostbite was starting and when it was too late. Caleb absorbed every word, asked questions when she paused, took mental notes because he had no paper. When the light outside started to fade, Cordelia stood. Come back Sunday, she said. 4 o'clock. I'll make dinner. Caleb stared. I don't have money to pay. Did I ask for money? No, ma'am. Then be here. 4 o'clock. Don't be late. Caleb left with his head spinning and something warm in his chest that had nothing to do with the tea. Sunday dinner that Sunday. Caleb showed up at 3:55. Cordelia answered the door with an apron on, flour on her hands. You're early, she said. Didn't want to be late. Come in then. Don't track snow. The dinner was simple. Pot roast, potatoes, carrots that had been stored since fall, bread she'd baked that morning. But to Caleb, it tasted like something he'd forgotten existed. Home. They ate in silence at first. Then Cordelia asked questions. About the house. About his parents. About how he ended up alone. Caleb answered carefully, not sure how much to share. But Cordelia had a way of pulling truth out of people. Gentle, but firm. Like weeding a garden. By the end of the meal, she knew most of it. And she didn't offer pity, just nodded. You'll come back next Sunday, she said. Again, not a question. Yes, ma'am. And you'll let me teach you what I know. Yes, ma'am. Good. Now help me with these dishes. They washed dishes side by side. Cordelia washing, Caleb drying. And for the first time in months, Caleb felt something like peace. The secret helper. The next morning, Caleb woke to find another bundle at his door. Bigger this time. He unwrapped it carefully. Inside, a wool blanket, heavy, military issue from the looks of it, canned soup, matches, and a note, different handwriting than before. Stay safe. Someone's watching. No name. Caleb looked around. The road was empty. Fields silent. But someone had been here. Someone cared enough to leave this. He brought the blanket inside, wrapped it around himself, and felt warmer than he had in weeks. Over the next week, more supplies appeared. Never when he was looking. Always early morning. Firewood stacked neatly by the door. A jar of honey. Thick socks. A scarf, each time with a note, each time unsigned. Caleb wanted to know who it was, needed to thank them. So he started waking earlier, watching, catching Vivian. On December 10th, he saw them, 5 in the morning, still dark. A figure approaching through the snow. Careful. Quiet. Caleb waited until they set the bundle down, then opened the door. The figure froze. "Wait," Caleb called. "Please." The person turned, and in the dim light of his lantern, Caleb saw her. Vivian Beckett, Warren's wife. She stood there, caught, looking almost guilty. "Why?" Caleb asked. His voice cracked. "Why are you helping me?" Vivian was quiet for a long moment. Then she stepped closer, into the circle of light. "Because my brother died here," she said softly. Caleb's breath caught. "Daniel Wright." Vivian continued. "He was my baby brother, 10 years younger than me." She looked at the house. He struggled. Alcoholism, lost his family, lost his home. I tried to help, but he wouldn't let me. That winter he came here, to this house, thought he could ride it out. Her voice broke. "I didn't know. He didn't tell me. And when they found him..." She stopped. Caleb waited. "I swore I'd never let it happen again," Vivian said. "That I'd never let someone freeze alone. And then you showed up, 14 years old, buying this place with everything you had." She looked at him, eyes shining. "You reminded me of Danny. Before everything went wrong. That stubborn hope." Caleb didn't know what to say. "I'm not your brother," he said finally. "I know," Vivian said. "But maybe I can help you, the way I couldn't help him." Caleb's throat tightened. "I'll honor his memory," he said. "I promise. This house won't mean death anymore." Vivian smiled through tears. "I believe you." She turned to leave. "Mrs. Beckett," Caleb called. She stopped. "Thank you for seeing me." Vivian nodded and walked back toward town, leaving Caleb standing in the snow, feeling less alone than he had in months. The sheriff. On December 15th, everything changed. Caleb was working on the roof, trying to reinforce a weak section before the next storm, when he heard the vehicle, a truck, county markings. His stomach dropped. Sheriff Dale stepped out, tall, weathered, expression unreadable. "Caleb Rivers," he called. "Yes, sir. Need to talk to you. Can you come down?" Caleb climbed down, slow, careful, trying not to show fear. Sheriff Dale pulled out a folder. "Got a complaint filed," he said. "Child Services." The world tilted. "Someone reported you're living out here alone. 14 years old. No adult supervision." "I own this property," Caleb said. "Legally." "Doesn't matter," Sheriff Dale said. "You're a minor. State law says you need adult supervision." "Who filed the complaint?" Caleb asked, though he already knew. Sheriff Dale hesitated. "Can't say. Anonymous." But his eyes flicked away, and Caleb knew. Mora, his aunt, couldn't face her guilt, so she'd turned him in instead. "What happens now?" Caleb asked, his voice steadier than he felt. "County inspector's coming next week. Has to verify the structure's safe, livable. And if it is, still need a legal guardian, someone over 18 willing to take responsibility. Or," Sheriff Dale's face softened, "or you go into the foster system. It's not personal, kid. It's the law." The walk to town. After the sheriff left, Caleb sat on the porch, hands shaking. Not from cold, from rage, from fear, from the unfairness of it all. He'd done everything right, bought the property legally, worked his hands raw, asked for nothing, and now they wanted to take it away. Because he was too young, too alone, too inconvenient. "No," he said out loud. "No, no, no." He stood, paced, thought, fought back the panic rising in his chest. There had to be a solution. Had to be. Then it hit him. Vivian. She was over 18. Way over. And she'd already said she wanted to help. Caleb didn't let himself think too hard. Just started walking. 4 miles. Through snow. In the cold. Until he reached the hardware store. Asking for help, Warren was at the counter. Looked up when Caleb burst in. "Where's Mrs. Beckett?" Caleb asked. Breathless. "Out back. Inventory." "Why, what's wrong?" Caleb didn't answer. Just went through to the back room. Found Vivian counting boxes of nails. "Mrs. Beckett," he said. She turned. Saw his face. "What happened?" "I need help," Caleb said. "Real help." And then the words poured out. The sheriff, the complaint, the inspector, the need for a guardian. "I know it's too much to ask," Caleb said. "I know you barely know me. But I don't have anyone else and I can't go into foster care. I can't lose the house, please." "Stop," Vivian said gently. She stepped closer, put her hands on his shoulders. "Breathe." Caleb tried, failed. tried again. You want me to be your legal guardian, Vivian said. Not a question. Caleb nodded. I'm 68 years old, Vivian said. I'm not sure they'd even allow. You're all I have, Caleb said, his voice breaking. Please. Vivian looked at him for a long moment. Then she called over her shoulder. Warren. Warren appeared in the doorway. He wants us to be his guardians, Vivian said. Warren looked at Caleb, then at his wife. Something passed between them, unspoken. The conversation of people who'd been married 40 years. Michael would have been his age, Warren said quietly. Vivian nodded. Danny, too. Once. Warren exhaled, looked at Caleb. You understand what you're asking? Yes, sir. This isn't charity. You'd have responsibilities, rules. I understand. And you'd have to let us help you. Really help. Not just take supplies and disappear. Caleb swallowed. I can do that. Warren looked at Vivian. She nodded. Then we'll do it, Warren said. Caleb's knees nearly buckled. Really? We'll file the paperwork tomorrow, Vivian said. See what the court says. Thank you, Caleb whispered. Thank you. Thank you. Don't thank us yet, Warren said. We still have to pass the inspection. Preparing for inspection. The next week was a blur of preparation. Warren came out to the house every day after the store closed, brought materials, showed Caleb how to properly reinforce beams, how to seal gaps that would fail inspection, how to make the place look livable, not just survivable. Vivian came too, brought cleaning supplies, helped scrub years of grime from the walls, made the small space feel less like a cave, more like a home. Cordelia showed up unannounced, took one look around, sniffed. You need curtains, she said, and returned the next day with fabric. Sewed them herself at Caleb's table. Simple. But they transformed the windows, made them look less like empty holes, more like eyes that could close. Inspection day. The inspection happened on December 20th. County Inspector Garrison arrived at 10, clipboard in hand, expression stern. Caleb stood outside, Warren and Vivian beside him, Cordelia watching from the road. Garrison walked through the house, slowly. Checked the roof, the walls, the floor. Tested the door. Examined the fire setup. Wrote notes. His face unreadable. After 20 minutes, he came back out. This structure is not up to code, he said. Caleb's heart sank. But, Garrison continued, it's better than 90% of what I've seen. He looked at Caleb. You did this yourself. Mostly, sir, they helped. Garrison looked at Warren and Vivian. You're willing to be his guardians. We are, Vivian said. Garrison made another note. I'll approve it, he said. Conditionally. You need a proper heat source within 30 days. Wood stove. Properly vented. We can do that, Warren said. Garrison handed Caleb a paper. Court hearing is December 27th. Both of you need to be there. He looked at Caleb. You've got guts, kid. Don't let them fail you now. And he left. Caleb stood there, holding the paper, trying not to cry. Warren clapped him on the shoulder. "We've got work to do," he said. Installing the wood stove that week, Warren and Caleb installed a wood stove, real one, cast iron, heavy. Warren had found it at an estate sale, bought it with his own money. They worked side by side, cutting a hole in the roof for the pipe, sealing it properly, testing the draw, making sure smoke wouldn't back up. It was hard work, technical. Caleb made mistakes. Warren corrected them, patiently. On the third day, December 23rd, they were adjusting the final piece of stovepipe when Warren suddenly stopped, set down his wrench, sat down hard on the floor. "Mr. Beckett?" Caleb asked. Warren didn't answer, just sat there, head in his hands, and started crying. Not gentle tears, gut-wrenching sobs, the kind that came from somewhere deep. Caleb froze, didn't know what to do. "I'm sorry," Warren said through tears. "I'm sorry, He couldn't finish. Caleb sat down next to him, waited. Warren's grief. After a long moment, Warren spoke. "My son," he said. "Michael. He died 10 years ago. Car accident, drunk driver. He was 15. His voice broke. "I was teaching him carpentry, like my father taught me. But we ran out of time. There was so much I didn't get to show him, so much he'll never know." Warren looked at Caleb, eyes red. "And here you are, same age, learning the same things. And I keep thinking," he stopped. "What if I'd had more time?" Warren whispered. "What if I could have saved him?" Caleb's throat tightened. "I'm not your son," he said quietly. "I know," Warren said. "I know that. But Caleb..." He put a hand on Caleb's shoulder. "You're giving me a reason to get up in the morning, to use what I know, to matter again. So thank you for letting me help." Caleb didn't trust himself to speak, just nodded. They sat there together, in the small house, with the half-installed stove between them. Two people, both grieving, both healing, both finding something they'd lost in each other. Finally, Warren stood, wiped his eyes. "Let's finish this," he said. And they did. First, real warmth. By nightfall, the stove was installed, properly vented, ready. Warren showed Caleb how to start a fire in it, how to control the airflow, how to keep it burning steady through the night. When the first flames caught, when the heat started to fill the room, Caleb sat by it and cried quietly, because for the first time since October, the cold didn't own him anymore. That night, the weather report came through. Blizzard warning. Major storm system. Could be the worst in 20 years. Expected to hit Christmas Eve. Warren heard it on his truck radio. Drove straight back to Caleb's house. "You ready for this?" he asked. Caleb looked around. The patched walls, the reinforced roof, the sealed windows, the new stove. "I think so," he said. "You think or you know?" Caleb met his eyes. "I know." Warren nodded. "Good. Because if this hits as hard as they say, you'll be stuck here for days." "I know." "You have enough food?" "Enough." "Wood?" "I've been stockpiling." Warren studied him, then smiled. Small, but proud. "You're gonna make it, kid." And he left. Preparing for the storm. Caleb spent December 23rd preparing, sealing every gap he could find, stacking firewood inside, filling every container with water, making sure the stove was ready, testing everything twice. That night he lay awake, listening to the wind pick up, watching his breath fog the air. The stove glowed red in the darkness, warm, steady. And Caleb thought about the months since October. Everything that had happened, everything he'd lost, everything he'd gained. He pulled out the photo of his parents, looked at it in the firelight. "I'm still here," he whispered. "Still fighting." Outside, the wind grew stronger. The storm was coming. But Caleb Rivers wasn't afraid anymore, because he wasn't alone. And his house, his broken, stubborn, impossible house, was finally ready to hold. Christmas Eve, December 24th. Christmas Eve. The storm hit at 4 in the afternoon. Caleb watched it come, standing at the window, seeing the wall of white approach across the fields. Then it was there, wind howling, snow driving sideways, visibility dropping to nothing. Caleb closed the curtains, fed the stove, settled in to wait. The house creaked and groaned, but held. The roof took the weight. The walls blocked the wind. Inside, the temperature stayed around 45 degrees. Cold, but livable. Caleb rationed his food, soup, bread, water, read by lamplight. One of the books Cordelia had loaned him, about surviving the Dust Bowl. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, Caleb stayed warm. He thought about the people in town, Warren and Vivian, Cordelia, safe in their houses, probably thinking about him, probably worried. He wished he could tell them he was okay, that all their help had worked, that he was going to survive this. The knock returns. At 9:45, the knock came, just like the opening. But this time, Caleb didn't hesitate. He knew what to do. He opened the door, and there they were. The Ashford family, Iris and Nathan, Simon and Oliver, just as desperate as the story had shown. But now, we're in real time. "Inside," Caleb said, his voice steady. "Now." They stumbled in. Caleb slammed the door shut, locked it, turned. Iris was crying, rocking Oliver. The small boy, breathing shallow, lips pale, eyes unfocused. "Put him by the stove," Caleb said. "Not too close, warm him slowly." Nathan helped her move. Simon stood frozen, staring. Saving Oliver, Caleb knelt beside Oliver, 4 years old, core temperature dangerously low. He'd learned this from Cordelia. Hypothermia. Minutes mattered. "What's your name?" Caleb asked the mother. "Iris," she whispered. "Iris, I need you to listen. We're going to save him. But you have to do exactly what I say." She nodded, tears streaming. "Strip off his wet clothes. All of them. Wrap him in this." Caleb handed her the wool blanket, the one Vivian had left. "Not too tight. We need to warm his core, his chest, his head." Iris obeyed, hands shaking. Caleb turned to the father. "What's your name, Nathan?" "Nathan, I need you to heat water. Not boiling. Warm. Use this pot." He handed over his soup pot. "And you." Caleb looked at the older boy. "What's your name?" "Simon," the boy whispered. "Simon, I need you to be brave. Can you do that?" Simon nodded. "Good. I need you to hold this lamp, right here, so I can see." Simon took the lamp, held it steady, his hands only shaking a little. Caleb worked. He'd never done this before. But Cordelia's words echoed in his head. Core temperature first, extremities later. No direct heat, no rubbing. Slow and steady. He pressed warm cloths to Oliver's chest, his neck, under his arms. Talked to him, even though the boy didn't respond. "You're okay, Oliver. You're going to be okay. Stay with us." Minutes passed. 5, 10. Oliver didn't move, didn't cry, didn't respond. Iris sobbed quietly. Nathan stood frozen. Simon held the lamp. Caleb kept working, changing the cloths, warming them again, talking, praying without words. "Come on," he whispered. "Come on, Oliver. Not in this house. Not again." 15 minutes. Oliver's lips were still pale. But maybe a shade better. 20 minutes. A flutter. His eyelids moved. "That's it," Caleb said. "That's it, Oliver. Come back." 25 minutes. A sound. Small. Weak. A whimper. Iris gasped. "Oliver." The boy's eyes opened, confused, frightened. Then he started to cry. Weak. Broken. But crying. Alive. The long night. Iris gathered him to her chest, sobbing. "Thank you," she said to Caleb. "Thank you. Thank you." Nathan dropped to his knees, put his arms around his family. Simon set down the lamp, ran to them, buried his face in his father's shoulder. Caleb sat back, hands shaking, heart pounding. He'd done it. He'd saved a child's life in the house where a man had died. Later, after Oliver was stable, after the family had warmed, after Caleb had given them soup and bread and every blanket he owned, they sat together by the stove. 5 people crowded in a tiny space, the storm still raging outside. Nathan told their story. They'd been driving west, looking for work, looking for a fresh start. The GPS had lost signal. They'd taken a wrong turn. The car had slid off the road, miles from anywhere. They'd walked, looking for lights, for help, for anything. "We saw your lamp," Iris said, "in the window." Caleb looked at the lamp, still burning. Always burning. He'd left it on every night since he moved in, so he wouldn't be alone in the dark. But tonight it had guided someone else home. "How old are you?" Nathan asked. 14. Nathan stared. 14. "And you live here alone?" "Not really alone anymore," Caleb said. "People help. You saved our son," Iris whispered. "How did you know what to do?" "I've been cold enough times to learn," Caleb said simply. Christmas morning, they stayed through Christmas. The storm didn't break until December 26th. 2 days of 5 people in a space meant for one. But it didn't feel crowded. It felt full. They shared food, told stories. Simon asked Caleb endless questions about the house, about how he'd fixed it, about what it was like to live alone. Oliver stayed close to his mother, still weak, still recovering, but alive. On Christmas morning, Iris looked at Caleb with tears in her eyes. "We had nothing to give you," she said. "No presents, no—" "You're here," Caleb said. "That's enough." Nathan helped Caleb with repairs, small things, a loose board, a drafty corner, working side by side. "You're 14, Nathan kept saying. "Really, really." Unbelievable. The storm breaks on December 26th. The storm broke. The sky cleared. Bright blue. Painfully beautiful. The world buried in white. The road barely visible, but passable. Nathan's truck was still where they'd left it, buried, but intact. With help from some farmers who came by Caleb's house, checking on him, they dug it out, got it started. Before they left, Iris hugged Caleb, tight. "What can we do?" she asked. "How can we repay you?" Caleb thought, then said, "Tell people. Tell them this house is safe, that someone lives here who will help." "That's all?" Nathan asked. "That's everything." Caleb said. They drove away, waving, promising to visit, promising to spread the word. Caleb watched them go, then looked at his house, the broken, stubborn, impossible house. That had just saved 4 lives. He walked inside, sat by the stove, and felt something settle in his chest, something solid, unshakable. This place wasn't just shelter anymore. It was refuge. And that changed everything. The court hearing December 27th. The courthouse was quieter than Caleb expected. Just him, Warren, Vivian, a judge. The hearing lasted 15 minutes. The judge looked at the inspection report, looked at Caleb, looked at Warren and Vivian. "The Becketts are willing to serve as legal guardians. We are your honor," Vivian said. And you're agreeable to this arrangement, Caleb? Yes, ma'am. The judge made a note, stamped a paper. Approved, she said. Guardianship is granted to Warren and Vivian Beckett, effective immediately. That was it. No drama, no questions, just a stamp. And Caleb Rivers had a family again. Outside the courthouse, Warren cleared his throat. We should celebrate, he said awkwardly. Vivian smiled. Dinner at our place tonight. Caleb nodded, unable to speak, because for the first time in over a year, someone had chosen him. The newspaper. Word traveled faster than Caleb expected. By New Year's Day, the entire town knew. The boy who bought the death house. The 14-year-old who saved a family in a blizzard. The kid who somehow survived what should have killed him. On January 2nd, the local paper ran the story. Front page. Small town news being what it was. The headline read, Teen saves family during Christmas Eve storm. There was a photo. Caleb standing in front of his house, looking uncomfortable, looking young. The article told the whole story. The auction, the house, the winter, the rescue. Iris and Nathan Ashford gave a statement, talked about the lamp in the window, about the boy who knew exactly what to do, about how their son was alive because of him. The paper called the house the lighthouse, said it was a beacon, a symbol. Caleb read it once, then folded the paper, set it aside. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like someone who'd gotten lucky, who'd had help, who'd simply done what needed doing. But the town saw something else. The kindness people started stopping by, not to gawk, not to judge, but to help. A farmer dropped off firewood, said it was extra. It wasn't. A woman from the church brought casseroles, 3 of them, frozen, for when he got hungry. Someone fixed the fence line near his property, didn't ask, didn't announce it, just did it. Caleb didn't know how to accept this, the attention, the kindness, the sudden visibility after months of being invisible. On January 5th, he walked into town, found the small church on Maple Street, knocked on the office door. Reverend Margot. A woman answered, mid-50s, warm eyes, clerical collar. Can I help you? She asked. Are you Reverend Wells? I am. And you're Caleb Rivers. Not a question. Everyone knew now. Can I talk to you? Caleb asked. Of course. Come in. The office was small, cluttered with books, comfortable. Caleb sat. Reverend Margot Wells sat across from him. Waited. People keep helping me, Caleb said finally. And I don't know why. Why do you think they're helping? Because they feel sorry for me. Margot smiled gently. Is that really what you think? Caleb hesitated. I don't know. They're helping, Margot said, because you showed them something they'd forgotten. What? That one person can make a difference. That a 14-year-old with nothing can build something that matters. She leaned forward. You saved a family. But more than that, you gave this town something to believe in again. Caleb looked down. I just did what I had to do. Exactly, Margot said. And that's why it matters. She studied him. What do you want, Caleb? I want to help more people, he said. Like the Ashfords, people who get caught in storms, who have nowhere to go. But I don't know how. Margot nodded slowly. What if we organized it, she said. Made it official. A shelter. Open to anyone who needs it. Could we do that with help? Yes. And that was how it started. Not with a grand plan, but with a conversation and a question. What if Maura returns? On January 8th, Maura showed up. Caleb was outside splitting wood. Heard a car pull up. Turned. And there she was, his aunt, standing at the edge of his property, like she wasn't sure she was allowed closer. Caleb set down the axe, slowly, waited. Caleb, Maura said, her voice tight. I need to talk to you. Why? Caleb asked, his tone flat. I read the article about what you did, and She stopped, started again. Can we talk? Please. Caleb didn't move, didn't invite her closer. Talk, then. Maura flinched, but stepped forward. I'm sorry, she said. For what? For everything. For kicking you out. For telling people you chose to leave. For... Her voice broke. For filing that complaint with child services. Caleb's jaw tightened. That was you. Yes. Why? Maura's face crumpled. Because I couldn't face what I'd done. Because every time I saw you in town, I felt guilty. And I thought... She couldn't finish. You thought if they took me away, you wouldn't have to feel bad anymore, Caleb said. Maura nodded, tears streaming. I'm so sorry, Caleb. I was scared. Graham lost his job and we couldn't afford... Stop, Caleb said, his voice hard. I don't want excuses. I want the truth. Maura looked at him. The truth is I was a coward, she said. You were a child, my nephew, and I threw you out to save myself. She wiped her face. And then you did this. You survived, you built something, you saved people. And all I could think was, how did this kid I abandoned become better than me? Silence. Caleb stood there, feeling the anger, the hurt, the betrayal. But also, something else, pity. Because Maura looked small, broken. Nothing like the aunt he'd feared. I'm not ready to forgive you, Caleb said finally. Maura nodded. I understand. But, Caleb continued, I'll let you try to make it right. She looked up. How? Tell the truth. Publicly. Tell people what really happened. Maura paled. Caleb, and volunteer at the shelter we're building every week. Show up. Do the work. I will, Maura said. I promise. Don't promise, Caleb said. Just do it. Maura left. Caleb stood there, hands shaking, not from cold, from the weight of it. He'd faced her, set boundaries, refused to let her rewrite history, and it felt like taking back something that had been stolen. Lillian Wright. 2 weeks later, a woman came to the house, 40, professional, carrying a briefcase. "Are you Caleb Rivers?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am." "I'm Lillian Wright." The name hit him. Wright. Daniel Wright's last name. "You're his daughter," Lillian said. "Yes." She looked at the house, her expression complicated. "Can we talk?" They sat on the porch Caleb had built, still rough, but solid. Lillian was quiet for a moment. Then, "My father died here," she said. 20 years ago." "I know," Caleb said. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. We were estranged. He struggled with alcoholism, lost his family, lost everything." She looked at Caleb. "When he died, I hated this place, hated what it represented. But then I heard what you did, how you survived, how you saved that family." She opened her briefcase, pulled out an envelope. "My father's life insurance finally settled. It's been in legal limbo for years, but it's done now." She handed Caleb the envelope. "What is this?" he asked. $4,800. Caleb stared. "I can't." "Yes, you can," Lillian said firmly. "You honored my father's memory better than I ever did. You took a place of death and made it mean life. Use it. Build something that lasts." She stood. "That's all I wanted to say." And she left. Caleb sat there, holding the envelope. $4,800. More money than he'd ever seen. He thought about what to do with it. A better roof, insulation, furniture. But then he thought about the Ashfords, about the next family who might need shelter, about making this place what it was supposed to be. A lighthouse, not just for him, for anyone lost in the storm. The community build. February brought the building phase. Warren helped design a workshop addition, 10 by 12 feet, attached to the main house with proper walls, windows, a workbench. Warren donated materials. Cordelia spread the word, and on the first Saturday of February, 20 people showed up to help. Farmers, shop owners, church members, even some teenagers from the high school. They worked all day, framing, roofing, hanging windows. Warren supervised, teaching as he went. Caleb worked alongside everyone, not as a kid being helped, but as someone who knew what he was doing, who'd earned his place. By sunset, the workshop stood, complete. Caleb walked through it, amazed. "You did this," Warren said. "We did this," Caleb corrected. Warren smiled. "Fair enough." Cordelia's stroke. That night, Cordelia didn't come to Sunday dinner, which was strange, because Cordelia was never late, never missed, never. Caleb waited an hour, then walked to her house, knocked. No answer. He tried the door, unlocked, stepped inside. "Miss Whitmore?" Nothing. He found her in the bedroom, lying on the floor, conscious, but unable to move her left side. "Caleb," she whispered, her voice slurred. "I fell. Can't get up." Caleb's heart stopped, then started, fast. He knelt beside her. "I'm calling an ambulance. Don't move." He used Cordelia's phone, hands shaking. The ambulance came. Caleb rode with her, held her hand. At the hospital, they said, stroke. Mild. Caught early. She'd recover. But it would take time. The hospital vigil Caleb stayed. Even when the nurses said visiting hours were over, he stayed. Sat by her bed, read to her from the book she'd been reading. About the Dust Bowl. About survival. 2 days later, Cordelia woke up, saw Caleb, tried to smile. It came out lopsided, but real. "Didn't think anyone would come," she whispered. Caleb's throat tightened. "You came for me first," he said. Cordelia's eyes filled. "Guess we're even then." Over the next month, Caleb visited every day, helped with her physical therapy, brought her things from home, sat with her when she got frustrated, when she cried, when she wanted to give up. "I'm 72, she said one day. "Too old for this." "You taught me how to survive winter," Caleb said. "Now let me teach you how to survive this." Cordelia laughed. Weak, but there. By March, she was home, moving slower, needing a cane, but home. Caleb came by twice a week, brought groceries, did repairs, made sure she was okay. One afternoon, she looked at him. "You know I never had children," she said. "Yes, ma'am. Never had grandchildren either." She paused. "But I got you, and that's enough." Caleb couldn't speak, just nodded. The foundation. In late March, the paperwork finalized. The Lighthouse Emergency Shelter. Official. Nonprofit. Board of Directors. Vivian Beckett. Director. Warren Beckett. Operations. Reverend Margot Wells. Community Liaison. Cordelia Whitmore. Advisor. And Caleb Rivers. Founder. Not director. Not manager. Founder. Because he was still 15, still learning, still growing. The adults would run it. But it was his vision, his heart, his home. The rules were simple. Door never locked during winter. Lamp always on at night. No questions asked. Just warmth, safety, and the promise that someone cared. The first guest. April brought the first official shelter night. A woman, maybe 40, showed up at the door, nervous, scared. "I saw the sign," she said. "Is it true anyone can stay?" "Anyone," Caleb said. She cried. Caleb gave her soup, a blanket, a place by the stove. She stayed 2 nights, then found work at the diner, found an apartment. But she came back to volunteer. "Someone help me," she said. "Now I help others." And that was how it grew. Person by person, story by story. Mora's redemption. Mora kept her word, came every Saturday, cleaned, cooked, organized supplies, didn't try to talk to Caleb, didn't push, just worked. One Saturday in May, after everyone else had left, Mora was washing dishes. Caleb was sweeping. "Thank you," Mora said quietly. Caleb looked up. "For what?" "For letting me earn this." Caleb nodded. "Didn't say you're welcome." Wasn't ready for that. But the nod was enough. For now. Caleb's birthday. June 8th. Caleb's 15th birthday. He'd forgotten about it. Too busy. Too focused on the shelter. Too much happening. But Vivian hadn't forgotten. Neither had Warren, or Cordelia, or Reverend Margot. They threw him a party. Small. Nothing fancy. Just people gathered at the house. Cake that Cordelia had baked. One-handed. Determined. Presents. Books. Tools. A new jacket. And from Vivian, a journal. Leather-bound. Beautiful. "Write it down," she said, "so others know it's possible." That night, Caleb sat at his table, in the house that had almost killed him, in the house that had saved him, in the house that was now saving others. He opened the journal, stared at the blank page, then wrote, "My name is Caleb Rivers, and this is what I learned about survival. It's not about being strong. It's about refusing to disappear." 5 years later, 5 years later. Caleb stood in the same doorway, 20 years old now, taller, broader, but still recognizable, still him. He was home from college, social work degree, almost done. Summers he ran the lighthouse, winters he studied. But he always came back. The house looked different, better. New siding, fresh paint, solar panels on the roof. The workshop was bigger. A second cabin had been added for families who needed more space. Inside the main house, the bloodstain was gone, covered by new flooring. But Caleb remembered where it had been. Always would. Cordelia still lived down the road. 77 now. Slower, but fierce. Still made Sunday dinners. Still taught anyone who'd listen. Vivian ran the board. 73. Sharp as ever. Warren had passed 2 years ago. Peacefully. In his sleep. But his workshop still stood. His tools still used. His legacy still alive. Mora volunteered every week. Had for 5 years, never missed. She and Caleb weren't close. Probably never would be. But there was peace between them. Hard won. Fragile. But real. Maya arrives on a cold November evening. 5 years after that first winter. Caleb was reading by the stove when the knock came. He opened the door. A girl stood there, 16. Thin, scared. backpack over one shoulder. "I saw your light," she said. Caleb smiled. "Come in. You're safe here." Her name was Maya. She'd run from foster care, had nowhere to go, heard about the lighthouse, walked 6 miles. Caleb gave her soup, a blanket, a place to sit. Within an hour, Cordelia arrived. She always seemed to know, sat down at the table, started talking to Maya, gentle, grandmotherly, drawing her story out. Then Vivian came, brought extra blankets, cookies, sat on Maya's other side, 3 generations around a table. The elder who'd survived the Depression, the man who'd survived abandonment, the girl who'd survived the system, all of them broken, all of them healing, all of them home. "What's your story?" Caleb asked Maya gently, and she began to tell it. The light. Later that night, after Maya had fallen asleep in the guest cabin, after Cordelia had gone home, after Vivian had left, Caleb stood outside, looking at his house, the lighthouse, no longer abandoned, no longer forgotten, no longer a place of death. He thought about the boy he'd been, 14, terrified, alone, standing in front of this same house with $63 and no plan. That boy had believed in something, not in himself, not yet, but in the possibility, the stubborn, dangerous possibility that broken things could be made whole, and that no one had to freeze alone. Caleb walked inside, lit the lamp, the same lamp that had burned for 5 years, every night, without fail. He set it in the window and stood there, watching the light spill out into the darkness, somewhere out there. Someone might see it, someone lost, someone cold, someone who needed to know that they weren't alone, that someone had left a light on just for them. He opened his journal, the one Vivian had given him, now filled with stories. He turned to a blank page and wrote, "Today, a girl named Maya came to the door. She was scared, alone, running from something, running toward anything. I gave her soup, a blanket, a place to sleep. Not because I'm special, but because someone did that for me once. And I learned that the smallest light can guide someone through the darkest winter." He closed the journal, looked around his house, the broken, stubborn, impossible house that had refused to let him die. That had taught him what home really meant. Not walls, not a roof, but people who choose to stay, even when leaving would be easier. Outside, the snow began to fall, the first of the season. Caleb watched it through the window, no longer afraid, because he'd learned something else too. Winter always comes, but spring always follows, and somewhere, always, there's a light burning, waiting to guide you home.